So this is our second year in Mesilat Yesharim. We are in chapter 2. We ended up with the idea that there really isn't any difference whether you have a natural tendency of pulling you towards 20-year-old blondes or whether you are doing it yourself even though you don't have a natural propensity. You might be attracted to 20-year-old brown-haired girl, right? Remember the brown-eyed girl? There was that the Doors?
No, yeah.
Morrison, right. All right. והנה, אולם והנה זאת באמת אחת מתחבולות היצר הרע, להכביד עבודתו בתמידות על ליבות בני אדם, עד שלא יישאר להם רווח, להתבונן ולהסתכל באיזה דרך הם הולכים. Says the Ramchal, that one of the tricks of our yetzer is to keep us very, very busy. So busy, such that we can't even take the time of day to introspect and think about what are we doing with our lives. It keeps us so busy that we can't really have time, take time out to say, what am I doing? How am I living? What is my path? Where am I going? He says because the person would know that they are paying attention to this, then they would correct their ways. And where do we learn this from? What in the Bible reminds you of people that were so busy they couldn't think?
Oh, Egypt.
Egypt. What does Pharaoh say when they say, let us go? He says to them, really? You're thinking about leaving? Like, it must mean you have way too much time on your hands. So we used to give you straw to make the bricks. So now you're going to have to get your own straw. That is, we're going to make you so busy, you're not even going to want to go on vacation. Because you're going to be so busy, which says usually when people are very, very busy, that means that they are thinking about a break. But the idea is that you can exhaust somebody, make the person so tired, they never take a break to think about where they're going. What are they doing? They're running like, you've heard of the expression of running like a headless chicken? I've never seen that, nor do I really want. It does?
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, okay.
Right. For like a minute or two, right? Yeah.
Okay. So the Pharaoh says, "Aya mitkaven shelo leaniach lehem." He didn't want to leave them alone, no revach. So they will never pay any attention. They will just work and work and work. And that is what our Yetzer does. It keeps us very, very busy. He says, because the Yetzer is ish milchamahu melumad be'armumiyut. It is a man of war that is full of trickery. Full of trickery. That just when you think you got him, boom, it flips you. Right? It's like grappling. If you grapple with somebody that's very, very good, you think you got him in like some type of a wrist, some kind of a hold, and all of a sudden you are wrapped up like a pretzel and don't know what happened. Like, how did this happen? Right? So he says there is no way to escape from the challenge of the Yetzer Hara unless we use Chochma Rabba v'Hashkafa Gdola. What's Chochma Rabba? Yeah. Great wisdom and Hashkafa Gdola and large, taking a lot of time of introspection, of thinking about our lives. And that's exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu says. The Ramchal brings psukim, brings verses from the Torah, from Shlomo HaMelech, and from the sages. He says that he brings evidence to show that this is really the position of Judaism, that we have to take time to think about what we're doing. One time I attended a seminar for how to get people out of cults. And they gave an example. This is what cults do. This is how they control you. And one of the things they say is that they don't allow people who are the initiates to ever be alone and give them time to think. Always keep them busy. Always keep them, like, there's no like sort of, let them take an afternoon off. Let them go think about, what they've learned. Let them go camping. Let them go, for a Shabbos away. Let them, because it is not about forcing something that is you can't think about. You should think about this. You should think about the different options of how does it work? What are the implications? If I do this, what's the implication? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? It is all about thinking. It is something that people don't really understand, that the Torah world is a very, very intellectual world. It requires lots of thinking and analyzing lots of different things and holding them in your mind as you are processing the information. It is not simply regurgitate, learning, let's say, 100 halachas or 50 halachas, and then regurgitate back. No. It's what are the principles behind it? Why do we do this? What's the implication? How does this fit? How does that fit? What does it all mean? Why are we doing all of this? Right? We talked about this yesterday and this today. Okay, good. This is ופשוט הוא שאפילו אם פיקח האדם על עצמו, אין בכוחו להינצל. It says, and it should be very clear to all of you, all of us, that a human being, if he is the one to decide that he is going to watch himself and is going to make sure that the Yetzer doesn't get him, he says he does not have the power to save himself from the evil inclination. The only way that you can be saved is because Hashem is helping you. Hashem is providing you the ability to resist and to save yourself from the Yetzer Hara. But if you're not doing the pikuach, if you're not watching, if you are not the guy that's trying to pay attention to what's happening with your life, then why should Hashem help you? If you're not doing it yourself, can He help you? You still have, if you make the first step, He will help you. But if you're not doing the first step, if you're not willing to look at your life and say, hey, where more am I going? What am I doing? Then Hashem will not help you. And then he brings an Imra in the Gemara. The Gemara says in Brachot, Kol mi she'en bo de'ah asur lerachem alav. Whoever does not have de'ah, doesn't have a mind, doesn't use his mind, you shouldn't have mercy on him. Because Hashem gave you a tool. He gave you a mind. You should look at your situation. You should try to evaluate. If you decide not to use a tool that you have, it's kind of like, a guy jumps in the pool and does this. Can you swim? Yes, but Hashem will save me. Blah, 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 blah. Just tread water, man. Grab the rope. Right, there's a story about this. There was a flood. And this guy sees the water coming up in his house and he climbs on the roof. And he starts praying to Hashem, 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 save me. And all of a sudden comes his neighbor with this, dinky little boat. And he says, hey, come on in, let's... And he goes, no, it's okay, And the water gets higher, and he's praying, Hashem, Hashem, please save me. Then comes the Coast Guard or whatever, the police. They come with a real, boat, very secure, with lifeboat, with a life jacket, the whole thing, And he's, I'm okay. And he prays to Hashem, and then comes the helicopter. Climb up, and the water's like up to here. Climb up. He says, no, Hashem will save me, and the guy drowns. And he goes up there, and he is just furious. He's just ripping heads off of angels. Like, I want to speak. Who's in charge here? I want to speak to God. And finally, he gets up to God, and he says, well, I prayed for you. I wanted you to save me. And he says, what are you talking about? I sent you a guy. Your neighbor came by. You didn't jump on the boat. The Coast Guard came. They did. The helicopter came. Nothing. What did you want me to do? You decided not to do anything. It's like a guy who davens to Hashem to win the lottery. And when he dies, he says, Hashem, why didn't you never give me the lottery? He says, did you ever buy a ticket? It's like, you didn't buy a ticket. How do you want me to give you the lottery? But you, God, you're all powerful. You can do whatever you want. You could have given me the lottery without the ticket. That's true. But that means that we should do our own ishtadlut. Everybody should you need to do a little bit of ishtadlut, working out, doing certain aspects to make sure that we get it. Okay. So the question is now, okay, Rabbi, I heard I should look at my life, I should pay attention to the details. How do I go about doing it? Right, you convinced me I should live an examined life. So is it in living an examined life, how do I start? What do I need to do? So this is the first thing that you should do. שיתבונן מהו הטוב האמיתי שיבחר בו האדם, והרע האמיתי שינוס ממנו. first thing is to know what is good and what is bad. You can't evaluate your actions and your thoughts and your desires and your speech unless you know what is good and what is bad. Otherwise, you just don't know. And a lot of people, what they do, since they don't have the clear definition, they fire the arrow, and then they draw the bullseye around the arrow. No, that's exactly what I wanted. No. How do you know what the target is? You have to first paint the target, and then fire the gun or shoot the arrow to keep. I don't like mixed metaphors, right? Sometimes people mix the metaphor and it doesn't work. So we have to pay attention to what is truly good and what is truly bad. And v'shat maaseh v'shelo b'shat maaseh. We have to understand that what is the good when we are in the process of action, of acting, of performing an act, and what is bad when we're acting, and what is bad or good when we're not acting. We have to have a good handle on all of these pieces. So he says the following, that is, in the time that we're acting, we need to think about it and see how does our act fit with the good. But when we're not acting, we need to evaluate. We have to remember our actions, and we have to weigh them. We have to weigh them in a sense to see what aspects of my actions I should not repeat. So I told you guys the story of the elevator, correct? I was in the elevator and there was a comment made that maybe shouldn't have been made, maybe should, right? But then the question is, you have to evaluate on the incident and say, okay, what was my mistake? What did I do wrong? Am I going to repeat it? Right? When you will get married and your wife is going to wear a dress and she's going to say, how do I look? You're going to know now you have a big question. If you say, that's a terrible dress, she said, really? My mother bought it to me. Right? Now you're in trouble because you insulted mother-in-law. If you say, you look great, she says, really? Like, you just say, I look great. Honey, you look great every time. Well, you're going to get it on the other end. It's kind of like there's a guy, his mother bought him a red tie and a blue tie. And she invited him for Shabbos dinner. And he was looking at the two ties and he's scratching his head, which tie to wear? Right? Can you wear two ties? No. So he had to pick one. Which one do you think he picked? The red tie or the blue tie? It's Shabbos.
Blue.
Blue. Right? Shabbos. You wear the blue. Walks into the house. His mother says, you didn't like the red one, did you? There are situations that the idea is like the guy comes home and then the next Shabbos he wears the blue one, the red one, like, so you didn't like the blue one. Is that your case? You have that with your mom? No. Good, Baruch Hashem.
What do you do in the situation?
What do you do with the situation?
What do you do when the wife asks you the question?
Set your fate.
I usually say, I don't really know. You look fine all the time. I love the way you look, and you move on. And if it's not going to work, then you're going to say, you have to have very subtle criticism. I don't know that dress would go with the purse that you really like. And then get out of there. Just go.
I call field instinct and hope for the best.
But the idea is that we evaluate, that we take some time during the day and look at the things that happened during that day and ask, was there something that I did that was wrong? Could I have done something better? Could I have done, Yes.
So doing that, being critical on yourself every day, looking back on the actions you did, the choices, the things you said to people, being critical on yourself can help you decide what's right or wrong. Why do we have to put it into a higher power about what's...
How do you know what's right and wrong?
Well, I mean...
Higher power to me sounds like exponents. I don't like I don't like the term. 3 squared times 5, to the 4th power.
Like
God, yeah. Say it. Right? God. Why do we need God? Because if we don't have an absolute standard of good and bad, we are in big trouble. I don't think that rationally, philosophically, a position of relativism holds any water. That position is, in my view, doesn't make any sense logically. So if you want to talk about that, we could spend some time talking about why relativism is a problem, and therefore you will need to have absolutes. And if you're going to live your life by finding out what is ultimate truth, or ultimate good and ultimate bad, we are talking about absolutes. Now those absolute standards, when they are applied to particular situations, could be different, right? You and I could do the same act, and for me it would be good, and for you to be bad. I don't want to give you an example now, but we can talk about that. That was also possible, and it doesn't mean that it's relative to me. When somebody says, somebody said to me recently, he said, well, to me, Rabbi, I said, to me, when you say to me, we have nothing to talk about. Because you could say, to me, this is green. To me, this is yellow. Can we argue about it? No. There's nothing to talk about when you say to me. The question is, what does it appear to both of us? That's what we need to talk about.
So it appears to be green to me. How do you talk about that still?
If you say it appears to me, then I would say, well, it doesn't appear to me to be green. So I guess let's talk about something else. That we do. You have to have some sort of common starting point. Otherwise, there's nothing to. If everything that you talk to a guy, he says, well, to me it's this. To me it's. Listen, I know that I'm talking to you. You don't have to tell me everything to me. I want you to tell me what you think reality is. Is today Tuesday or it's not? He says, well, to me it's Tuesday. To me it isn't. I mean, let's talk about something and make it firm and stand up for your principles. I try, and I ask Hashem to help me, to live according to the principles of the Torah. I believe I'm a man of principles. And I try to implement them as consistently as possible. It's not always easy. Sometimes I miss the point, but I try. Yes?
Do you think it's possible for a group of really intelligent people to come up with a base set of rules that would cover all things that humans need in their life to survive the longest that they can, the healthiest that they can, without damaging others?
No. And we see that in every legal system. Every legal system you have, at least in America, we say the best minds, of attorneys and lawyers and scientists, they get together and they draft laws. And a year later, they come and they change the law. And they said, well, we need to make another okimta. We call this okimtas, right? In the Gemara, we call it okimtas. You just have to, and it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. We cannot think of all the possibilities and the variables. That's why when they have a definition, then they, I don't know if you followed, but the Obamacare was, that law was this, because they tried to do exactly that. Let's think of every scenario. But they're also nagua badavar. They were also affected by it. That is, they were lobbying. There were lobbying groups, and there were insurance companies. That is, you don't have someone who is completely disconnected, disinterested. Disinterested does not mean uninterested. It means a fair, that is looking at it from an objective standpoint. Human beings cannot be objective. Yeah? Yes, Jeremy.
So over the experience of learning different ideas, I've come to an understanding that there's like a concept of subjective reality, where some people will be like, it's not Tuesday to me, it's Tuesday to you, because I'm in China and you're in America. So it's like, it's true to both of them because it's literal, but it's preposterous for it to be both true at the same time. How do you get
you say, well, there's this idea in relative, when you say this is relative. So it's the question, is relative to what? So relative to the geographical place, I'm standing Tuesday here, Monday over there. But that's no longer relative then, because you filled in what it's relative to. So all the people who are in China, it's Tuesday for them. So relative to you, it's Tuesday, but relative to everybody here, it's not. So in China, is it everybody would agree that today is Tuesday? Yes. Everybody in somewhere else, would they agree that today is Monday? Yes. So is it relative? In reality, it's not relative. Because you filled in the aspect that it's relative to. To say John is tall, right? Okay. Then tall in what sense? Relative to what? To whom? To the dog? To his brother Charlie? How do you know if that's true? Maybe Charlie is taller than him.
How do you marry that to right and wrong? Because then you have like, this is more right and then this is left, right? So now we have a hierarchy of morality and you have all these details and you try to bring them to what's true and what's not true. And you say, from my experience, and then you're back to square one. Well, your experience is not the experience.
Correct. So the Torah tells us we have absolutes. And the first absolute is that God exists. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. It says, do not murder. What does that mean? Murder is always wrong. So people say, well, but what about killing? Killing is not murder. That's a different category. Well, what you might call murder is it's like, I'm not talking about my definition. I fit my life to that. That is the definition. You don't like the definition, then you want to change it. You can, if you think that's going to get you anywhere. But there are absolute definitions in the Torah for morality, for what is good. Remember, the Ramchal said, what is the goal of life? Goal of life is to be, what? Seek pleasure in serving Hashem and connecting to Hashem. And how are you going to do that? By performing mitzvahs. What is the ultimate good? Connecting to becoming as perfect as one can and connecting to God. That is the ultimate good. There is no, so now if somebody says, okay, to me, the ultimate good to connect to God, I need prayer. So I pray 20 minutes, for just Shmona Esrei. Another guy says, look, for me, connecting to Hashem is Torah learning. They both say, we understand that prayer is mandatory and Torah learning is mandatory, but one guy connects more to this. Does that mean that it's relative? No. It means that we have different tools, we have different personalities, we have different characteristics. But chas v'shalom, are we going to say that the principles then have to change based on our characteristics? No. We may have the measure. The Orchos Tzadikim says that really all this idea of moral development, moral character, the character is like spices. And you have to have the right amount of each moral character to know. Everybody needs a little bit of anger. You just need to know when to use it. If you use too much of it, it's going to spoil. They'll spoil the whole thing. If you're too humble, right, people are going to walk completely all over you, and that's going to be too much. You have to have but you have to know when to put what spice. That he is talking about in that space of doing the evaluations. Doing the evaluation means that we have to understand who we are. We have to understand that we don't like avocados. And why don't we like avocados? I love avocados. So it's not only now, Brian mentioned, okay, so I'm going to pay attention to all the negative things and I'm going to be self-critical. But the Ramchal says there's the other side of the coin. You should also focus on what you did good. And the good things that you've done. And use that to do more of. It's not only negative putting yourself down, I was this, I was this, I was this. It is also doing the things that we did well. And recognize that. There's no problem with that. And he says the idea is, he quotes a Gemara in Eruvin, that there was a debate among the sages whether was it better for human beings to be created or not. Do you guys are familiar with this? Good.
It was like an unaskable question.
Unaskable question.
Like asking, was it good that God made everything, considering we would all fail anyway?
Okay, but the question is, if you think about it, is it better that human beings should exist or not? And the argument, and we can talk about what that means at a later time. I don't want to get into this too much. But the Gemara concludes that it was better that if we weren't created.
It would be a perfect world.
Correct. But since we are created, and this is the will of God, right? So then it says, V'achshav shenivra, since it was created, yefashpesh b'ma'asav. A person should go like this, be very, very careful and look at his life and his actions to see what he's doing. Ve'ikadamri, says the Gemara, and there are those who say that it's not yefashpesh, it's yemashmesh. Those are two Hebrew words that have different meanings that are very hard to transmit into English. So, and the Ramchal gives us two ideas to understand. He says pishpush and mishmush are two separate things. Pishpush is that we're looking at our actions to see in general. We're looking at generalities. Are there things that I violate, that I did that are against the Torah? And I should stop doing them. But mishmush is to look at our good deeds. Things that we've done very well. Right? So pishpush would mean that you're going to a clothing store and you're looking for what? Jeans. For a black suit. Jeans. I think this is Or Sameach. We're looking for a black suit. And you go to the rack and you're doing this. Right? You're looking for the black suit. That's pishpush. Mishmush is when you find one, you start feeling it, looking at it in detail. That is to say, more careful inspection of the thing that you were looking for. So he says, when you look at your good deed, right, you found, I did something very good today. Ask yourself, is there any way you could have done your good deed even better? Could you have served lunch in a better way than you did? So let's say you served lunch, no smile. Or you smiled in the first 10 guys with a complaint, and after that, there were no more smiles. Just take your food and move. Right? The question is, could you have done it in a different way? Could you improve your actions? Is there something negative in your good deed that you could actually just take out? Sort of, it's kind of like when you have gold and you want to purify the gold and make it even better. So what do? Or silver, how do you get the dross out? Melting it, and then and then you get that stuff out and it becomes pure silver. That's the idea, that you are looking even at the good things. The bad things for sure you're going to say, I'm not going to do this again. Klal hadavar. So what's the general rule? Yeh adam me'ayen al ma'asav kulam, mefakech al kol drachav. That a person should investigate all his actions and all his path, his actions, not to allow himself to follow a bad habit or a negative moral characteristic that he has. Yes?
Compared to the Torah.
Yeah.
What about before the Torah was received?
Derech Eretz. Yeah, what about it?
It must have been harder, no?
It must have been, but it wasn't impossible. Otherwise, we wouldn't
do it themselves, kind of.
What? Avraham. We know that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were successful in doing that.
What about
but not everybody. Not everybody was successful. They were not Jewish.
No, I'm saying, what about non-Jews today?
What about them?
How do they decide what's good?
They have the 7 Noahide laws. They also have absolutes that they should live by. And they say there is an opinion that the rabbis say that any rational mitzvah, right? Rational mitzvahs they also have to keep. So rationally, a person should honor their parents because it just makes sense. It makes sense not to kill old people.
Right. Some things are
right.
Rationally, you can tell good and bad.
So long as you have control over your desires.
Rabbi, don't you think it's a bit bold and chutzpahdik for the Gemara to conclude that human beings shouldn't have been invented, since we were invented in God's image by God?
That's a good question. I thought about that. I think that's what, who was asking that? That was what you were asking. I think that was similar to what Jeremy was. I think that was you. That he is essentially saying the same thing. But I would say the answer is no. For one reason. Because the rabbis are telling us that look how much damage we can cause in God's world. Look how bad human beings can affect in this world. So since we are here and God put us here, the least we could do is pay attention to what we're doing and not make his world worse.
That's what I mean, even if you've done bad, everyone's still got a propensity to be perfect in the end. It's never too late for a Jew to be fully observant.
Correct. But it's not. But the Ramchal is not only talking about observance. He's talking about being a moral, upright person.
When I'm saying that, I mean all aspects, like living properly.
Yeah. If you lived according to the Torah, then you would be a moral person that you would look up to. Yeah? And that's where Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were. Was it impossible to get to? No. Was it difficult? Absolutely.
But it is possible.
Yes. And the Gra says in his parish on Esther, he says, we see that there are Gentiles who are good human beings. Yeah? We don't deny that. Why would we deny?
They must have Jewish genes and something like that.
No, you don't have to get into that because it's not something about genes. It's about something that you work on. Moral development is it's development. No one is born perfect. The Ramchal is very clear on that. Please.
Then it's also possible for someone who's not religious to also come to that. It's just harder.
Correct? Much harder.
Okay.
And when you live in a society, correct. Listen, is it possible for you to fly? No, it's not. It's probably some way you could figure out to suspend gravity. But is it likely? Do you want to take a chance for your connection to Hashem, to God, to say, I'm going to do it on my own, God, thanks? That's a big issue.
Isn't that what,
What's his name's son?
Moshe's brothers, Moshe's two nephews.
Nadav Avihu. So there, the issue is something very, very different, and there are lots of different opinions. So we can talk outside of class on that of exactly what happened there, because there are midrashim, there's Gemara on it, there are Rishonim who talk about, and they have different takes, different shitas of how they understand what exactly happened there. But the simple answer is that they were hoping to serve Hashem in their own way. And on their level, that was a big, big mistake. Because God said, this is how I want you to serve me. This is it. This is the boundaries. Now, if you tell me, it sounds to me, what you're saying is, God says, here's my shortcut. Here's the operating manual for your machine. Here's what it is. Here's how it functions. Here's how it works. Here's how you put it in the laundry. This is all the things that you can do, and it won't get damaged. You say, listen, I don't need it. I'll figure it out. I'll take this baby on a test run. Okay? Do you have the choice? Hashem gave you the choice to do that. Is it smart? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the idea is you learn what the manual says, and then you decide for yourself, does the manual... Now, if you say, I don't really buy that there's a manual, it's not this class. Right? That's a separate class that you have in the morning. That's a bigger issue. But on the view that there is a manual that tells us how to live our life, and God, in His infinite mercy and love of us, gave us this shortcut. Why would you? It's kind of like your dad gives you car keys in his car. He says, "Go drive wherever you want." He's like, "That's okay. I'll walk." What? Why would you? Because I'd rather do it on my own. Okay. Good luck. You're not going to get there. Well, I will. I would say, yeah, the possibility is there, but you're not going to get overseas. So he says that we have to look at every habit that we have and ask ourselves, is this habit bringing us closer to God or not? Okay? Next he says, it's time to stop, so let's stop here because there's mincha. It's 3:45.